I'm doing this video not because I am happy about being right, but also, well, because I was right, and unfortunately, because I was right. And what are we talking about? Well, of course, we're talking about the ceasefire that happened, and then, as I said back in that video, you want a ceasefire, then what? And that's what I was saying in that video. What was to happen then? Where's the peace plan? Where's your work to make sure that, there can be peace in the Middle East? It's not. People were just campaigning for a ceasefire, and of course, as I've said multiple times about a lot of people in, especially the anti-war communities that are around on the left, their biggest criticism is constantly you have peace and then wonderful stuff happens. It's all magic and wonderful, and peace will reign. And it's not. It's not happened. You had about a 5-day ceasefire, roughly, where yes, hostages were exchanged, but now Israel, as we said, has just come back to it, and so has Hamas as well. Because, as I said at the time, and I constantly said, you cannot get peace in the Middle East while you have a Hamas and while you've also got a right-wing Israeli government. As long as you've got those two things in place, it ain't going to happen. And especially when you've got Benjamin Netanyahu, who is desperately, desperately trying to cling on to power way out of this, while saying that, oh, we can completely wipe out, Hamas. The thing is, if you look at Hamas's leadership, a lot of it isn't in Gaza, it's in other countries. So this idea and belief that they can just go in and just wipe out, Hamas as an organization, maybe you might have, removed their power base from there for the time being, but they'll be back. Might take them a while, but they'll be back. That's just the unfortunate reality of this. And as I've continuously said to people, when you look at the real world, the real politique, the real world of international politics, a lot of it is not very good. And unfortunately, that is the case. It's just the case, but you can get good outcomes if you are willing to work hard, to sit down and negotiate, and to campaign for these things. And here's the thing, you can find out there other campaigns that are just as like this, that have been calling for solutions for years and have never gotten anywhere, but they are staffed by people who do and genuinely believe that these real solutions can be achieved. And unfortunately, every single time, and we had this in about Ukraine, this has popped up again recently. Yes, we should just do a deal or do a peace. Well, okay, what would Russia demand for that peace? You do realize that their initial goals have expanded from 2 oblasts in Ukraine to 4 oblasts that they now claim as their own. There's a ton of real unanswered questions that when every time this comes up, and it comes down to fact, you just have people in these peace movements like Just Stop War, because they are the prime sort of movement here in the UK, but there are others who just go, we get peace and that's it. And that, when we achieve what? How do you get to this peace? How do you ensure that when you get to, quote, this peace, that the two parties can then agree to this peace? How then, after that, do you ensure that both parties agree to those agreements about peace? Just look again at Ukraine, where there were several peace agreements before this recent Russia-Ukraine war. And I'll tell you now, It wasn't Ukraine breaking those agreements. It was Russia time and time again. Trying to get these things sorted out and to bring a sort of permanent peace to these situations, whether it be in, of course, Ukraine or, of course, the current situation in Gaza, they need to have real, thought out, concrete solutions and proposals. One of the things that has always been said and brought up about this, and we've even said it as well, the best probable hope to peace is probably the two-state solution. However, because of, well, most notably the right-wing Israeli government, they don't really want that. They have, explicitly said they do not want a Palestinian state. How then do we sort of achieve that? Well, of course, we've got to put pressure on Israel, and also we've got to put pressure on the US to say, hey, if you don't end up doing this, then what you've seen here recently in the past unfold in the past couple of months is you're just going to get this on a continuous, endless cycle again and again and again and again until you start putting pressure on Israel to go and follow through on the two-state solution. But no, oh, don't worry, guys, peace. And as I said in that video, you get your ceasefire, then what? Well, you've had your ceasefire. You've had 4 days, which, don't get me wrong, I'm glad about. I'm glad about that. Don't get me wrong. Don't say I'm not glad that there wasn't a ceasefire or anything like that. I am. But what has it achieved? All seriousness, what has it achieved? You've called for a ceasefire. You've got a 4-day ceasefire. You've had a handover of hostages. And both sides have just gone right back at it. Ultimately, it makes everything that what you've done completely pointless. And I'm not saying that to be mean or anything like that. But as I said in my original video, as I say now, what was the plan after? You achieve a ceasefire, then what? The peace movement, the Just Stop War people in here in the UK, were confident that once we got this ceasefire, both sides would just start talking, and that would be it. We'd work towards something. That's not what was going to happen. Everyone, all the experts were saying this exactly. You want a ceasefire, and then you've got to put in the hard work to start talks, to start negotiations. And that, once again, didn't happen. And that's why I continuously say movements like Just Stop War and all these other movements, more often than not, are more often crewed by people who really don't understand the first thing about international politics. The disagreements, they might be knowledgeable, but they aren't really prepared to say, well, okay, if we want to solve this problem, then we have to look at this. And then to do that, well, we have to talk about this. We have to start negotiations in and around this. We have to look at give and takes, what other countries will be prepared to be. They're not even prepared to do that. And trust me, there are good organizations out there who do that. But you can tell the ones that have stayed away from the current protests in and around, of course, what's been going on in Gaza, because they knew it as well. You're calling for a ceasefire, and then what? I'd hate to say it, I was right. And unfortunately, I was right. And I do not like being right in this regard. I really do not. But as I've said before, when you look at the world of international politics, and sometimes it's really hard to try and find good, lasting solutions, but it is possible. You can do it, but you have to be prepared. You have to find solutions. You have to find compromise to be able to achieve these things. And then you can achieve lasting peace. And I still do believe we can achieve a real lasting peace, uh, you know, from this conflict. I really do believe we can, but it's going to take a lot of hard work. A lot of hard work. And I know a lot of people, especially after this, are going to feel really disheartened. And seeing this as well, I know there are a lot of people going to be angry at me because they are disheartened about this and about this campaigning. Well, here's the thing. You shouldn't give up. You should continue your campaigning. And I really do hope that you do. Don't be disheartened by this. But you've got to now look at real solutions, how you can get really bringing peace to the Middle East. And there are people out there who've talked about this, who constantly saying how we can do this, how we can go about it. The two-state solution. So, I'm sorry if this is a bit of a downer video today, but honestly, I felt it I needed to do it. So I did call out these people at the time, and I said, you're going to call for a ceasefire. Then what? Well, that's exactly what happened. There was no then what? There was no afterthought. Just get a ceasefire, and peace will reign. Well, it's not how, unfortunately, things have happened and how things have worked out. I would have liked things to have worked out very differently. I would have liked to have been proven wrong, but that's just the way things have rolled, unfortunately. And again, I'm sorry for being such a downer in this video, but I just think it's the reality of what's gone on here. But as always, I do hope that there will be peace in Gaza. But it's certainly not going to be today, and it certainly doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon, unfortunately. And that's just the reality. So, with that, as always, we'll see you all next time.